this situation that we have with Birmingham City Council, second biggest city in the UK, and the local authority, which is very big. I think it's the biggest.
It's the biggest in Europe.
Yeah. I mean, too big?
It's, well, not to say too big, it's the biggest in Europe, and it's one of 20 councils at risk of bankruptcy. And what we've seen over the last 13 years in particular, but certainly the last 8 years, has been that local authorities have borne the brunt of government cuts because it's more difficult to pick up on cuts at local level and blame the government centrally for that than it is to blame central government for direct cuts, like, for example, the problems we got this morning at Wandsworth. And we've seen tremendous pressures on local councils, adult social care, for example, taking a huge part of the budget, housing problems and so on, housing all sorts of people coming in, including people from abroad. And councils haven't got enough money. And we've got 20 councils now, including Labour and Tory ones, Kent County Council, for example, which are at risk of bankruptcy. And we have to ask ourselves, how long can this go on? Because councils deliver essential services on planning, on leisure, on housing and so on. They can't deliver these services.
Norman, was the Birmingham thing, well, you could say it was of their own making, of course, but was this bankruptcy avoidable because they were faced with a £760 million bill through pay equality, which dates back over a number of years. They were sunk when that torpedo hit.
Well, I think Glasgow had a similar issue, as a matter of fact. But yes, I'm not going to say Birmingham's been well run over the years. It hasn't been well run in my judgment, and therefore they brought some of it upon themselves. But to get a judgment that says you suddenly have got to find £760 million, I mean, that's very challenging for any council under any control in any part of the country. But I think this goes to a wider point about how well Britain's placed for the future. When we got Wandsworth, which is overcrowded, crumbling and vermin infested. We just heard that a moment ago. We got possibility of getting GP appointments these days. We got massive NHS waiting lists. We got sewage in our rivers and on our coastlines. We got not enough police on our streets. You know, the public realm in this country is crumbling, and, you know, Britain is falling to bits in some respects.
Responsibility of central government, and what should be the responsibility of local authority when it comes to paying the bills?
We've got far more centralised control in this country than most countries have. Most European countries have, certainly. And local councils are much more constricted by legislation than councils are elsewhere in Europe. In addition to that, councils are restricted in what they can do with their council tax. The consequence of all that straitjacket is that councils don't have enough money, they're not able legally to raise it, and they're not able to fund their services. So the public realm locally is looking pretty shabby. You and I were talking off air, Eamon, about the amount of rubbish around, the amount of weeds on our streets and so on. You wouldn't have seen that 20 years ago.
No. I tell you what, I don't know if it's the Highways Authority, I don't know if it's local authorities, whatever, but you go particularly on motorways, the amount of debris on motorways, I think, I put it to you, is dangerous, absolutely dangerous. In the outer lane and the inner lane, no one bothers plucking weeds or whatever. They've given up that with pavements and things like that. Does that matter? Does that matter?
It does matter, because it just diminishes society, I think. It makes us all feel a bit grubby. Society's a bit grubby. You know, I used to remember I went from Canada to the US by rail. I remember doing that. And all the public realm in Canada was pristine. All the fences were painted. Yeah. And as soon as you got across the border to the US, it was all a mess. Yeah. Well, we're getting to that stage in this country where the public realm no one wants to own it. Nobody feels guilty for dropping rubbish anymore or that sort of thing.
I remember 30 years ago being in America, filming in America, and looking at this, you know, biggest country in the world type thing, richest country in the world, and thinking their roads are a disgrace.
Yes.
I used to think in Britain, whether it's Northern Ireland or where else you are in Britain, the roads are fantastic. Can't say that now.
No, what you can say now about the roads is a pothole has appeared, the local council is looking into it.
Norman Baker, thank you very much indeed.